Assassin's Creed Brotherhood by Oliver Bowden. Chapter 2. Where did the others go? Ezio asked Mario, his mind still reeling from his recent experiences, as they made their way to the great nave of the Sistine Chapel. The gathered assassins were no longer there. I told them to go. Paola has returned to Florence, Teodora and Antonia to Venice. We need to keep ourselves covered throughout Italy. The Templars are broken, but not destroyed. They will regroup if our assassin brotherhood is not vigilant. Eternally vigilant. The rest of our company have gone ahead, and will await us at our headquarters. They were keeping watch. So they were, but they knew when their duty was done. Ezio, there is no time to waste. We all know that. Mario's face was earnest. I should have made sure of Rodrigo Borgia. Did he harm you in the fight? My armor protected me. Mario clapped his nephew on the back. I spoke hastily before. I thought you were right not to kill needlessly. I have always advised moderation. You thought him as good as dead, by his own hand. Who knows? Perhaps he was faking. Or perhaps he failed to give himself a fatal dose of poison. Either way, we must deal with the situation as it is now, and not waste energy pondering what might have been. In any case, we sent you. One man against an entire army of Templars. You've more than done your part. And I am still your old uncle, and I've been worried about you. Come on, Ezio. We have to get out of here. We have work to do, and the last thing we need is to get cornered by Borgia guards. You wouldn't believe the things I've seen, Uncle. Just be sure to stay alive, then, that I may hear of them. Listen, I've stabled some horses just beyond St. Peter's, outside the precincts of the Vatican. Once we reach them, we'll be able to make our way safely from there. The Borgia will try to stop us, I expect. Mario flashed a broad grin. Of course they will. And I expect the Borgia to mourn the loss of many lives tonight. In the chapel, Ezio and his uncle were surprised to find themselves faced with a number of priests, who had returned to complete the Mass, interrupted by Ezio's confrontation with the Pope, as he and Rodrigo had battled for control of the pieces of Eden they had discovered. The priests confronted them angrily, surrounding them. "What are you doing here?" they yelled. "You have desecrated the sanctity of this holy place. And assassin, God will see that you pay for your crimes." As Mario and Ezio pushed their way through the angry throng, the bells of St. Peter's began to ring the alarm. "You condemn what you do not understand," said Ezio to a priest who was trying to bar their way. The softness of the man's body repelled him, and he shoved him aside as gently as possible. "We must go, Ezio," said Mario urgently. "Now!" "His is the voice of the devil," another priest's voice rang out. And another said, "Turn away from them." Ezio and Mario pushed their way through the mob and out into the great courtyard of the church. It seemed that the entire college of cardinals was assembled, confused, but still under the dominion of Pope Alexander, Rodrigo Borgia, captain of the Association of the Templars. "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood," the cardinals were chanting, "but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, and the shield of faith, wherewith you shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked." "What's the matter with them?" Ezio asked. "They are confused. They seek guidance," Mario replied grimly. "Come on. We must get away before the Borgia guards take notice of our presence." He looked back towards the Vatican. There was a glitter of armor in the sunlight. Too late. Here they come. Hurry! Chapter 3. The billowing vestments of the cardinals formed a sea of red that parted as 4 Borgia guards pushed through in pursuit of Ezio and Mario. Panic overtook the crowd as the cardinal started shouting in fear and alarm, and Ezio and his uncle found themselves encircled by a human arena. The cardinals, not knowing where to turn, had inadvertently formed a barrier. Perhaps their courage was unconsciously bolstered by the arrival of the heavily armoured guards, their breastplates gleaming in the sunlight. The 4 Borgia soldiers had unsheathed their swords and stepped into the circle to face Ezio and Mario, who in turn drew their blades. "Lay down your weapons and surrender, assassins. You are surrounded and outnumbered," shouted the lead soldier, stepping forward. Before he could utter another word, Ezio had sprung from his stance, energy returning to his weary limbs. The lead guard had no time to react, not expecting his opponent to be so bold in the face of such overwhelming odds. Ezio's sword arm circled in a blur, the blade whistling as it sliced through the air. The guard tried in vain to raise his sword to parry, but Ezio's movement was simply too quick. The assassin's sword hit its mark with unfaltering accuracy, slicing into the guard's exposed neck, a plume of blood following its impact. The 3 remaining guards stood motionless, astonished at the speed of the assassin, and idiotic in the face of such a skilled foe. It was a delay that was to prove their death. Ezio's blade had barely finished its first lethal arc when he raised his left hand. The mechanism of his hidden blade clicking as the lethal spike appeared from his sleeve. It pierced the second guard between the eyes before he could even twitch a muscle in defense. Meanwhile, Mario, unnoticed, had taken 2 steps sideways, closing the angle of attack on the 2 remaining guards, whose attention was still entirely focused on the shocking display of violence unfolding before them. In 2 more steps, he closed in and heaved his sword under the breastplate of the nearest guard, the point rising up sickeningly into the man's torso. The guard's face contorted with confused agony. 1 man left. With horror in his eyes, he turned as if to flee, but was too late. Ezio's blade struck his right flank as Mario's sword sliced into his thigh. The man fell to his knees with a grunt, and Mario kicked him over. The 2 assassins looked around. The blood of the guard spread across the paved ground, soaking into the scarlet hems of the cardinal's vestments. "Let's go before more of the Borgia's men reach us." They brandished their swords at the now terrified cardinals, who quickly fled the assassins, clearing a path that would lead them from the Vatican. They heard the sound of approaching horses, no doubt more soldiers, as they pushed their way forcefully towards the southeast, running at full speed across the expanse of the plaza, away from the Vatican in the direction of the Tiber. The horses Mario had organized for their escape were tethered just outside the Perulius of the Holy See. But first they had to turn to those papal guards who had followed on horseback and were bearing down on them fast, their thundering hooves echoing on the cobbles. Using their falchions, Ezio and Mario managed to strike away the halberds the guards thrust at them. Mario cut 1 guard down just as he was about to stab Ezio from behind with his spear. "Not bad for an old man," Ezio cried gratefully. "I expect you to return the favor," returned his uncle, "and not so much of your old man." "I haven't forgotten everything you taught me. I should hope not. Look out!" Ezio whirled round just in time to slice the legs of a horse from under a guard who'd galloped up, wielding a vicious-looking mace. "Buona questa," shouted Mario. "Good one." Ezio leapt sideways, avoiding 2 more of his pursuers, and managing to unsaddle them as they careered past, carried forward by their own momentum. Mario, heavier and older, preferred to stand his ground and cut at his enemies before leaping out of their reach. But once they had gained the edge of the broad square that faced the great cathedral church of St. Peter, the 2 assassins quickly clambered to the safety of the rooftops, scaling the crumbling house walls as nimbly as geckos, and scampering across them, leaping over the gaps where the streets between them made canyons. It wasn't always easy, and at one point, Mario nearly didn't make it, his fingers scrabbling for the gutters as he fell just short. Panting hard, Ezio doubled back to pull him clear, succeeding just as the crossbow bolts fired by their pursuers rattled uselessly past them into the sky. But their going was far faster than that of the guards, who, more heavily armoured and lacking the skills of the assassins, tried in vain to keep up by running through the pathways beneath until gradually they fell back. Mario and Ezio clattered to a halt on a roof overlooking a small square on the edge of Trastevere. Two large, tough-looking chestnut horses were saddled and ready outside a lowly-looking inn, its battered sign declaring it to be the Sleeping Fox, while being watched over by a wall-eyed hunchback with a bushy moustache. "Gianni!" hissed Mario. The man looked up and immediately undid the reins by which the horses were tethered to a huge iron ring set into the wall of the inn. Mario instantly leapt down from the rooftop, landing in a crouch, and from there sprang into the saddle of the nearer and larger of the two horses. It whinnied and trod the earth in nervous anticipation. "Shh, campione," said Mario to the animal, and then looking up to where Ezio still stood on the parapet, he yelled, "Come on! What are you waiting for?" "Just a minute," said Ezio, turning to face two Borgia guards who had managed to struggle up to the roof and were now facing him with, to his astonishment, cocked pistols of a type that was new to him. Where the hell had they got those from? This was no time for questions, though, so he whirled around through the air at them, unleashing his hidden blade and slicing each neatly through the jugular before they had a chance to fire. "Impressive," said Mario, reining in his impatient horse. "Now to get a move on." Ezio threw himself off the roof to land close by the second horse, which was being held firmly by the hunchback. Then he rebounded off to spring into the animal's saddle. It reared excitedly under his weight, but he immediately had it under control and wheeled it round to follow his uncle, as he rode fast towards the Tiber. At the same time, Gianni disappeared into the inn, and a detachment of Borgia cavalry tore round the corner into the square. Digging his heels into the horse's flanks, Ezio sped after his uncle, as they made their way at breakneck speed through the broken-down streets of Rome towards the dirty, sluggish river. At their backs they could hear the shouts of the mounted Borgia guards, cursing their prey as Mario and Ezio galloped through the maze of ancient streets, slowly pulling further away. Having reached Tiber Island, they crossed the river by a rickety bridge that trembled beneath their horses' hooves. Then they doubled back, turning north to ride up the main street, leading out of the squalid little town that had once been the capital of the civilized world. They did not stop until they were in the depths of the countryside, and had assured themselves they were out of reach of their pursuers. Near the settlement of Setibagni, in the shade of a massive elm tree, by the side of a dusty road that ran parallel to the river, they reined their horses in and took time to draw breath. "That was too close, Uncle." The older man shrugged and smiled a little painfully. From a saddlebag, Mario produced a leather flagon of rough red wine and proffered it to his nephew. "Here," he said, slowly catching his breath. "Good for you." Ezio drank, then grimaced. "Where did you get this?" "It's the best they can do with the Sleeping Fox," said Mario, grinning broadly. "But once we get to Monterigatoni, you'll fare better." Ezio smiled and passed the flask back to his uncle, but then his features became troubled. "What is it?" asked Mario in gentler tones. Slowly, Ezio produced the apple from the pouch in which he'd stowed it. "This. What am I to do with it?" Mario looked grave. "It is a heavy responsibility, but it is one you must shoulder alone." "How can I?" "What does your heart tell you?" "My heart tells me to get rid of it, but my brain—" "It was vouchsafed to you by whatever powers you encountered in the vault," said Mario solemnly. "They would not have given it back to mortals if there was not a purpose devised for it." "It is too dangerous. If it fell into the wrong hands again. Ezio looked ominously at the slothful river flowing nearby. Mario watched him expectantly. Ezio hefted the apple in his gloved right hand, but still he hesitated. He knew he couldn't throw such a great treasure away, and his uncle's words had swayed him. Surely Minerva would not have allowed him to take back the apple without reason. "The decision must be yours alone," said Mario. "But if you feel unhappy having custody of it now, give it to me for safekeeping. You can take it back later when your mind is calmer." Ezio hesitated still, but then they both heard, in the distance, the sound of thundering hooves and the baying of hounds. "Those bastards don't give up easily," said Mario through gritted teeth. "Come, give it to me." Ezio sighed, but replaced the apple in its leather pouch and threw it over to Mario, who quickly stowed it in his saddlebag. "And now," said Mario, "we must jump these nags into the river and swim them across. That'll put the damn dogs off our scent, and even if they're bright enough to follow the Tiber themselves, we'll be able to lose them in the woods over there. Come on. I want to be in Monteriggioni by this time tomorrow." "How hard do you expect to ride?" Mario dug his heels at the mount's flanks, and the beast reared, foam at the corners of its mouth. "Very hard, because from now on, we don't simply have Rodrigo to contend with. His son and daughter are with him, Cesare and Lucretia. And they are the most dangerous people you are ever likely to meet."